So, lesson 8, important first steps in victim care. We're always going back to Jesus as our example, and he gives us a biblical example in Luke chapter 10, verses 30 through 35.
Jesus took up the question and said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him, beat him up, and fled, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down that road. When he saw him, he passed by on the other side. In the same way, a Levite, when he arrived at the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan on his journey came up to him, and when he saw the man, he had compassion. He went over to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on olive oil and wine. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him. When I come back, I will reimburse you for any extra you spend.'"
So, as we look at the individuals who saw the Samaritan in need, what different heart attitudes do you see? We have a heart attitude of being self-protective, not wanting to be unclean, not wanting to have to go back to the temple, of being avoidant, going to the other side of the road. And we see the example of the Samaritan then who is Christ-like. In our churches, it might sound like this. Mary Ann, Dean's wife, came to church late Sunday morning and slipped into the back pew. She was one of those women who just couldn't get it together. She was always late and generally irresponsible. Although she used to be outgoing, she was quiet and difficult to draw out. Joan stepped through the back door, glanced at Mary Ann, looked away, and moved across the aisle to the other side. Jerry, a fellow deacon who had known Dean and Mary Ann for years, came into the sanctuary, saw her, said nothing, turned and led his family to the other side. But a woman who was visiting that day sat next to Mary Ann. When she saw tears, loneliness, and brokenness, she felt compassion for her. Reaching out a hand, she sat with Mary Ann through the service, offering a mint and a Kleenex, giving her a squeeze now and then. At the end of the service, the stranger took her to the pastor's office and explained the need for help, spending the next hour talking through her care and safety. Call when she needs help. I'm going to see what's available in town. Here's my number. We see these same heart responses in our own churches and in our own lives. When Joan saw Mary Ann sitting in church, she was avoidant. Her value was on other things. She had other things to do. She didn't want to have anything to do with Mary Ann and whatever issues or problems might be going on. Jerry didn't want to get involved. He may not even like Dean, and so he really doesn't want to get in a tangle and get between the two of them or reach out to Mary Ann. But the visitor was kind and compassionate. She was willing to get involved at cost to herself. So we begin to look at the cost. The Samaritan made a decision to get involved in an unattractive situation, perhaps even a dangerous one. What did the Samaritan risk? He risked his personal safety. When we were visiting in Israel and we looked up at the cliffs and we were looking at that road to Jericho, there are a lot of places for people to hide, like a lot of big places, a lot of caves, a lot of things that are hidden and unseen. Chances are those robbers didn't go very far because this was a busy thoroughfare, and that may also have been why the Levite and the priest kept walking, was to protect themselves. So the Samaritan stopped and he made himself vulnerable. He may have risked his health in that decision, his resources. He actually bandaged the man in that moment. Like, he stopped and took the time. Whether he had enough water to do that, whether he needed those resources for himself, for his journey, we have no idea. There was sweat. I mean, oh my word, those are hot, dry places in the world. And this would have been a chore, a difficult thing to come alongside, help a man who's wounded and get him up on a donkey or a horse. Have you done that? Like, that's difficult. That's blood, that's sweat. That's getting close to someone. That's allowing what is on them and creating the wounds to get on you. That's sharing in that suffering with them. Perhaps he ended up going to a different destination than he originally intended. Perhaps he ended up having to stop early, change his plans, spend an overnight. He was late to his next appointment. But again, we go back to our last lesson, and we love what God loves. And God loves people. And the agenda and the organizations and the responsibilities and the other obligations are secondary to loving people. As you and I come alongside a victim of domestic abuse, what might it cost us? There's uncertainty. Again, no two situations are the same. You can't presuppose what's happening or going to happen unless you're aware of the patterns that are already existing in that relationship or in those individuals' lives. And what does that mean for you? A lot of uncertainty. This might be something you've done before, so you may not know what to do. You might be afraid of doing it wrong or making a mistake. It may mean interacting with social resources. It may mean calling the police or law enforcement. Maybe you've never done that. It might mean interacting with the domestic abuse shelter or local advocates or going to the courthouse. And when you've never done that before, and especially if in your mind that means something's wrong, it's going to mean overcoming those fears and doing some new, different things and not knowing how to do that and not being the expert. It might be fear. This can be a fearful thing. When an abuser's desires are threatened or an obstacle is put in their way, they often respond with anger, sinful anger, and you could be that person, or what you're doing could cause that response. Fear is reasonable. It's not always wrong. It's a self-protective fear, and it's a gift God gives us, and we want to be aware that that could happen, and how do we trust God, and how do we walk through the process? The one woman I was helping to pack her belongings, and her offender was released from jail. That was the reality of where we were, but God protected us. He was there. You may have a heightened awareness. You may be much more aware of things you weren't aware of before. When you go out in public, if you know what a perpetrator's vehicle looks like, or you see them in the store, or you're sitting near them in church, or all of these things will suddenly take on a whole different meaning to you, and they will have significance they didn't before. You might receive phone calls. I have a sense that there are individuals who friend me on Facebook. I mean, I understand that there are trolls out there, and I understand that people claim to be who they're not, but when I'm getting to friend requests every day from people with no profile that just disappears, I start to get a little suspicious. I get phone calls from people I don't know, and I don't always answer those. So things you may need to put in place for your safety. For instance, a Google number. Google numbers, little hint here, they're available to anyone with a Google account. You can create a number, you can have it ring into any phone you want, but it won't release your information to them, and then you can choose to accept a call or to reject it. So that's one of the things that I use when I give out business cards as a domestic abuse advocate. I give them my Google number, or people that I don't know. It may be your perceived safety, real or imagined. Again, it could cause fear. There's the time element. These things take a long time, and that's not wrong or bad. It's the reality, but it's helpful to be prepared and to expect these things. In each of these areas, whether we think it's our job or not our job, like this wasn't the Samaritan's job, but the Samaritan happened by that way and had compassion. And Jesus ends the story with these words, "Go and do the same." The bottom line is that as we interact with sufferers, as we come alongside them, we are revealing the heart of Christ. And you have a choice. You can avoid it, you can be self-protected, or you can be compassionate and get involved at whatever risk, but the choice is yours.